Hiya guys, how you all doing? Here we are again, another transfer video update. It's been a long old week. I'm sure it's been the same for you guys as fans. I'm sure it's the same for Eddie Howe and the guys involved in the recruitment at Newcastle at the moment. I'm sure it's been a difficult and bruising few days, and it's been pretty exhausting for myself as well. Having to sort of report on this and speak to people and try and find out what's going on. And as Eddie said in his interview today over in Austria, all that work with sort of very little output at the end of it. So I'm going to get into a video with some fresh news for you, which I'm sure you can see in my headline. Before I do that, just another request, if I can, that you subscribe if you haven't done already. Really appreciate it. And if you like my video as well, then I kind of get an impression of this is the sort of stuff that you guys like, and I'll keep doing it. I'm guessing transfer stuff is what you're after, but just if you're able to give me a like, that'll underline it. And on top of that, if you give a comment on the video as well, I do get an opportunity to wade through the comments. I'll be on the train up to Glasgow on tomorrow night, Friday night, to head up for the Celtic Newcastle game, so I'll get through the comments then. So please leave the comments on the video below, and I'll check out the comments on the previous video as well. But anyway, enough of that, onto the video. And I'm here tonight because you might have seen on my my social media earlier on this evening, and across Sky Sports outlets, that Newcastle are not so much turning their attentions to a defender, but they're aware they need to bring a defender in this transfer window. And I've brought three names to the table there, essentially sort of letting you guys know what Newcastle's shortlist is, and the hope is that they can get one of these three defenders landed by the end of the transfer window to give the defence much needed help. Of course, very strong on the left side of centre back with both Botman and Byrne. On the right sided centre backs, there's Fabian Schär. Yes, Jamal Lascelles has come back from injury, but I think there's a real want for manager to bring in a right sided central defender. So earlier on tonight, I put an exclusive story out that the three players Newcastle are interested in and are likely to go for are Nicolo Savona of Juventus, 22-year-old. He is a central defender. He played at right back quite a lot for Juve recently, but he's played the last few games at central defence. He actually got injured in the Club World Cup and he's set to miss the next few weeks. But look, Newcastle have been watching him for some time, I'm told, and they're considering making an approach to Juventus for Savona, 6'4" central defender, right back. So you know Eddie Howe loves players who are versatile, can play a number of positions, and Savona could obviously fill in either right back or centre back, and he's a big, tall, athletic, strong defender. So that's one player that I'm told that they're considering an approach for. The second name is a name I'm sure you guys will have all heard already, and that's Giorgio Scalvini from Atalanta. He's more of an out-and-out central defender, a little bit younger, a year younger than Savona at 21. But Newcastle are monitoring that situation, and again considering making an approach to Atalanta, but obviously they're keen on Savona as well. I'm not sure which of the two is sort of their first choice, shall I say. But those two Italian defenders, I was told that there's been some talks with Italian agents and some meetings taking place of late, and those are the two defenders that Newcastle like from Italy. So one from Juve, Savona, and one from Atalanta, Scalvini, which I'm sure you guys will have heard already because he's been mentioned a couple of times. The third defender that I've mentioned in that piece on the shortlist is Cesar Tarrega from Valencia. He's a Spanish central defender, again, tall, imposing, strong, physical, and he's another player that Newcastle are keeping tabs on and sort of looking into whether they can potentially do something there. So those are the three. I get the impression the two Italian defenders are probably more favoured than the Spanish one, than Tarrega. But those are the three names. So Nicolo Savona from Juventus, Giorgio Scalvini from Atalanta, and Cesar Tarrega from Valencia. So that was the exclusive we brought to you a little bit earlier on. Newcastle hoping to bring in a defender. It's not that they've switched away from the striker, but I think they've privately kind of given up on Hugo Ekitike. With Liverpool now at the table, they know they probably can't compete financially. I personally thought the £70 million bid that Newcastle made on Monday morning, or Tuesday morning was it? Can't remember, the days are all merging together. I personally thought it was a good bid. I thought it was a fair bid. It was a club record offer. I thought it's more than, for a player who was sold to Eintracht Frankfurt last summer for just £14 million, you know, a £56 million upgrade on that, to offer 70 million. It would, you know, it would have beaten Newcastle's transfer record by some 7 million. I thought it was more than fair, I have to say, and I don't think Newcastle should be held to ransom for players. I think 70 was more than enough. I mean, to think that Newcastle could have had him back in 2022 for, what was it? I think it was about 20 million back then, I think. And then really, I mean, there's questions, should they've maybe gone for him last summer when he was 14 million? Of course, he's not had the season that he's had. That was pre the season he's had at Frankfurt. But, you know, he scored 22 goals, 12 assists, and suddenly his value's gone up from 14 million to 85 million, they reckon. It's incredible. They reckon they're going to make a 70 million pound profit on him from Liverpool. But look, Liverpool are involved. There was a slight concern earlier in the week that maybe this was all just a little bit of mind games, and you know, Newcastle would get Ekitike and Isak would go to Liverpool. But I think we need to just look at this as it's a pretty simple thing, in that Newcastle tried to bring Ekitike in because they thought there was a chance that Isak could go, but there is no way they're going to allow, or they don't want to allow Isak to go anyway, but they wouldn't even allow Isak to go for 150 million without getting Ekitike. They didn't want to be left with either of them. I was really scratching my head as to how Newcastle can have both of those players earlier on in the week, and you know, while I think they might have tried to, I think the sensible decision would have been, if they managed to get Ekitike, to have allowed Liverpool to take Isak if they could afford him. But look, Newcastle have dug their heels in, as they've got absolutely every right to have said Isak's not for sale, and Liverpool have moved on to Hugo Ekitike. Now, look, you guys will know better than me, being Newcastle fans, but I would imagine that your first choice in that situation would have been to have Isak and Ekitike. The second choice would have been to have, if it was only one, to have Isak, and the third choice would be to have only Ekitike. So, okay, you've not got both, but the worst case scenario was you had neither of them. So at least you've still got Isak. It was how you were, and Newcastle remain on the hunt for a second striker. I wouldn't say that the move for Ekitike is dead. I would say I fully expect him to go to Liverpool. I think it's very unlikely Newcastle would get him. I'm not expecting Newcastle to up their bid. I think they've made that one bid at £70 million, and that's it. I'm not too sure why there was a couple of German outlets saying on yesterday, on Wednesday, that Newcastle had increased their bid. I think this game has been played there clearly, because my information was Newcastle hadn't increased their bid. They'd made that one very, very good offer of £70 million, and that's where they were. So I'm not sure whether that's been used just to try and smoke out Liverpool or not, whatever. It feels like there's been a lot of games played in this transfer tug of war, and to be honest with you, it's getting to the stage where it's really difficult to sort of get your head around what's been going on. Newcastle never made that second bid, and that was false news yesterday. I don't know. I don't know what the need to put that kind of information out was, because Newcastle have made that one offer. They're aware now Liverpool at the table. Liverpool have probably got more money to spend, and the player is probably going to prefer to go to Liverpool. We put it out earlier today that the player wants Liverpool. I think if it was only Newcastle at the table, he would have wanted Newcastle. But I think when Liverpool are there, they've just won the Premier League. They can offer more wages. You know, they've essentially got a gaping hole there as a number 9. They're desperate for a number 9 to come in. He's going to play, isn't he? If he'd come to Newcastle and Isak was still there, he's going to be second choice. But again, I think the reason Newcastle were doing it deep down, I think the reason they were doing it is they were fearing that they were going to lose Isak. And if they didn't, then at least they'd have the both of them for a full year, which would have been so exciting to see the two of them play together, or at least be involved together. One plays and one's on the bench, or mixing it up or whatever. But yeah, so that's it. The other story put out today, kind of been aware of this for a couple of days and sat on it a little bit because I wasn't 100% sure. And if I'm honest, I'm still not 100% sure. I know there's interest there from Newcastle and they like Johan Visser. I'm not too sure how advanced any move is. So I see a few people there saying that Newcastle have now turned their attentions to Visser. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's quite as clear as that. I think it's a player that they like, they're aware of. It sounds like he's probably available at the right price. I'm told around about 35 million pounds. I don't think he's a complete Eddie Howe signing, but I think he's someone who could come in. He'd be happy to play 20 games, start 20 games a season. He's not going to demand to start every game. I think he can. He's versatile. He can play in different positions across the front. He scored goals in the Premier League, 19 last season. So for me, it ticks a lot of boxes. Yes, he's 28. He turns 29 in September, and people say, well, Eddie likes to bring in young players, and yes, absolutely he does with a resale value. But you've got to remember, since the takeover, he's also bought Chris Wood, Kieran Trippier, Dan Burn, Nick Pope, guys who have all done well, and they're in their late 20s, early 30s. So sometimes you need to look at it, I think, and say, well, do you know what, we need a player in. And it's getting to the stage for Newcastle where I'm not saying it's desperate, but the available strikers, decent strikers, is getting thinner and thinner on the ground, and that's why I think they may turn to Visser. So I've not said any talks have taken place because I don't believe they have. I believe there's an interest there. And I think they will soon turn to him or another. But I think at the moment they're now looking at it and thinking, right, we've kind of been bruised a bit with the whole striker situation. Let's move on to a central defender, and that's why I brought you that news earlier. So look, I know you guys are getting frustrated. I know it's a difficult time. You have to remember Newcastle are currently working without a sporting director. It's difficult. You've got a recruitment team there who are working around the clock to try and bring you guys signings. And it's difficult for them. They've been left in a very, very hard situation by the club by not appointing another sporting director, and you've got guys who are used to doing recruitment, dealing big negotiations. You've got the manager who's trying to train the team, having to get involved in things on a day-to-day basis, and it must be pretty stressful and difficult for them, especially when you're dealing with such big numbers. So I know I'm not saying to you be patient, but I think you just needs to be a bit of understanding that they're in a really difficult scenario at the moment, and there's people having to do jobs that they wouldn't necessarily normally do. A sporting director, as Eddie said earlier today, is a key role, and they've obviously, Newcastle haven't got that at the moment. So that's part of the reason why things are being difficult. Plus the market, plus other clubs thinking Newcastle have got all the money in the world, and a combination of that is, and the fact the market, but also the fact there's not a lot of players out there. Everyone wanted Howson, the centre back. Everyone wanted Delap. Everyone wanted Mbumo. Everyone wants the same small pool of players, and Eddie warned about this before the transfer window opened, and that's what's happened. So look, this is available. I'm told that he'd be more than happy to come to Newcastle. He'd be desperate to come here. So let's see if Newcastle do turn to him. There is an interest there, as far as I'm concerned, or as I'm aware, that's all it is at the moment. So let's see where it takes us. But yeah, I thought I'd just bring you guys the news regarding the central defenders. But hey, what is tomorrow going to bring? Because every single day is a different situation, different story at the moment, and if nothing else, it's given us lots of stuff to talk about. So thanks for listening. Leave your comments below. See you in the next video. Cheers.